Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the regular meeting of Council to order. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. I'd ask for a procedural motion to proceed in camera, moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 29th regular meeting of Council. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight's regular meeting of Council will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. The question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left for agenda items only. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. We have no one joining us electronically tonight. All councillors are here. And the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. For late items this evening, agenda item 12F, rezoning application number RA475 for 444, 450, 500 Comox Road and 55 Mill Street and 1 Terminal Avenue. We're adding delegations from Dean Strongatharm, Brad Martin, and Frank D'Ambrosio. And for agenda item 14A, Councillor Armstrong, notice of motion regarding Boxwood Road walkway. So that's added as a notice of motion only this evening, Your Worship, and that's everything.
Thank you very much. Motion for the adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion for adoption of minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Mayor's report. Well, firstly, welcome back, everyone. The first meeting since in the last 4 weeks, I guess, 5 weeks now. And it never hurts repeating good news. As of June 30th, the building permit values in the city of Nanaimo were $319 million, which puts the city on track for a banner year in housing starts. By the end of the year, permit values could surpass the 2019 record of $445 million. Indeed, if we had stopped on June 30th, it would still be the second biggest year on record for building permits in the history of the city. And something to be celebrated, as we know, with record formerly rising real estate prices, the need for housing in this community, I won't use too much hyperbole, but is desperate for those who are looking. Little reminder, as we're apparently headed into another heat wave, that the City of Nanaimo has prohibited open fires effective August the 4th. Falling are still permitted at private residences. Cooking devices fueled by propane, natural gas, naphtha, kerosene, charcoal, briquettes, or electricity, such as barbecues, grills, and smokers, but it's important to ensure that briquettes are fully extinguished after use. And the good news on the front, and I give credit, as I often do, to the Accessibility Committee in the city. There's been an accessibility mat installed at Departure Bay Beach, and that allows anyone who faces some challenges, including those in wheelchairs, using strollers, wagons, kayak trailers, to move more easily or to access the beach area. We do recommend, however, that when using the mat, if possible, to get assistance due to the grade and the uneven ground under the mat. It'll be left at the beach for the remainder of the summer season, and if found useful, others may be purchased and installed at other parks in the future. I'm not going to go on to anything further than that, and I will say something that is not political. I would remind all of you it is civic election year, and I hope you will take advantage of the civic elections to vote. I like to remind everyone in a fairly serious way, there's no sense going out on November the 11th to honor those who died in several wars, either fighting for or defending the rights and freedoms of people to vote. And so I encourage everyone to vote, whether you're voting for candidates who happen to be around this council table or anyone else. It is extremely important. Last election, we had a turnout of 40% roughly. Historically, the numbers hover around 30. So I would say to Nanaimo, let us show our civic pride and get out and vote. Nothing further to report. We have no rise and report, Ms. Gurry, and we do have 2 presentations tonight. The first is the Nanaimo Art Gallery feasibility study, which is in the council binder and available for the public if they'd like to read it on the website. And I'd like to welcome Carolyn Holmes tonight, who is going to present the results of the Art Gallery feasibility study. Good evening, Ms. Holmes. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you to Mayor and Council for giving us this platform to share with you. Ywain Nustli Sitala Tusnanemoch Mustimok Hawkwishus Tuntamak Atanaqueo. Firstly, I wanted to say thank you to the Snamo people for having us here today and letting us use their land. I'd like to raise my hands and say hi Sepka to Snamo for stewarding this land. At the gallery, our team talks all the time and thinks about what it means to be an art gallery on this territory. When we're talking about a future gallery, we like to think, imagine what that might look like on this territory. And we're always considering what it means to be a good neighbor when we're working. I am Carolyn Holmes, Executive Director at Nanaimo Art Gallery. I'm going to start by telling a little bit about our story, and then I'm going to introduce my colleague, Louisa Plant, who's going to tell you about the process for the feasibility study and the results, and then I'm going to share our next steps. Before moving to Nanaimo, I lived for just over 20 years in Prince George, a community the same size as Nanaimo and with so many similarities. I just can't get over it. I played a key role there in development of a new Class A art gallery right in the heart of the downtown. And I witnessed firsthand how that largely blue-collar community could embrace the gallery. It became a community center where preschoolers came to our classes. We had children's art classes, camps, teen programs. We had a maker space at the gallery. Then we'd have volunteers. Those same children would come to our teen programs. They'd sometimes be summer students, staff, and then they'd bring their own families and friends to our exhibitions and programs and events. I'm really proud of the role that the gallery played in transforming that community. 2 years ago, I moved to Nanaimo for a new challenge. And since day one, the team at the gallery has been involved in Reimagine Nanaimo. We've taken part in all the community engagement, and we're really happy to be contributing to Nanaimo's transition to this mid-sized, thriving urban city. And we know the gallery can make a difference. Already in 2021-2022, our visitor numbers were on par with the pre-COVID numbers. Our programming numbers this last year that ended in the end of March were up over 164% over pre-pandemic numbers. And I just looked today, and I can update these numbers, but in the first 5 months, we've already matched our numbers for visitors pre-COVID. So that's only, a few months in. We're very excited to explore more ways that we can connect with community. We've started Art Lab Sundays, which are a drop-in program that have been happening since December once a month. They'll now be twice a month. We have a new teen program that started. We've got amazing exhibitions, and we've had great attendance in our art lab and also with galleries on the night markets. To quote the city plan, great cities aren't created by accident. They're created through thoughtful plans and intentional actions. Nanaimo Art Gallery's development to date has been the result of significant thought and thoughtful planning, intentional actions, perseverance, and a lot of hard work. In June of 2013, Council approved a phased development for the plan for Nanaimo Art Gallery. The cultural plan for Creative Nanaimo, 2014 to 20, spoke of this phase development. Phase 1 included the transition of management to 150 Commercial Street, to the Nanaimo Art Gallery. Phase 2, which we completed in 2015, was the move from VIU to consolidate the space at Nanaimo Art Gallery at 150 Commercial Street. And since then, we've had countless renovations. We've renovated the exhibition space, we've created the art lab programming space, we've renovated a kitchen, the facade, and most recently, during this last year, we expanded Art Lab so we can have more programs, which you've seen the results already. And we redid the whole downstairs, which is our office hub. And it's not only new offices for Nanaimo Art Gallery staff, but for our 4 tenants, which include Vancouver Island Symphony, Theatre One, Nanaimo Archives, and Crimson Coast Dance. That leaves us with phase 3, as outlined in the cultural plan, the expansion of Nanaimo Art Gallery and the creation of a Class A gallery. In 2021, the City of Nanaimo gave us $25,000 for a feasibility study. Thank you. And the gallery matched that funding with $25,000 from the Nanaimo Hospitality Association. A working group that included myself, Deborah Jacqueline and Chris Midgley from our board, and Darcy Osborne, Lynn Wark, and Bill Corson from the city, worked with Louisa and her team at Nordicity over the last 10 months. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Louisa Plant, who will tell you about their process and their findings.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome.
Hi, thank you. It's great to be here this evening. So my name is Louisa Plant and I'm a manager at Nordicity, and we are a global consulting firm with offices in Vancouver, Toronto and London, and I'm part of the Vancouver team. And we work in cultural planning, research and analysis and policy development. And for this exploratory feasibility study, we worked with Ardell Architecture, who are a mid-size architectural firm based in Victoria and Vancouver. So together, working with the gallery, we looked to answer several questions, as you see on screen. And the key questions out of this are looking at how should Nanaimo Art Gallery grow to meet the needs of the community? How would this fit with the wider city agenda? And also, what would be needed to realise the next phase of development? So we started, as we usually do, with some desk research, and this included a document review of existing gallery and city strategies. We looked at different trends in terms of public art galleries and how they're evolving both within Canada and internationally, and we also conducted a comparative review. So we compared Nanaimo Art Gallery to galleries which either are based in cities of a similar size or in places with a similar demographics, or also comparable kind of focus for a public art gallery. So we came across various findings, but the main thing really which we took out of this is that Nanaimo Art Gallery is much smaller than comparator art galleries. For example, at 5,000 square foot, it's nearly 4 times smaller than the smallest comparator, which is Kamloops Art Gallery. In fact, the other galleries' exhibition spaces alone are the same size or even twice the size of the entire current Nanaimo Art Gallery building. So having completed the desk research, we looked towards community engagement. And so for this, we engaged with 150 people within Nanaimo, and this involved an open house event hosted in April at the gallery, which attracted 120 attendees. We had an online survey, which had 100 respondents, and we had 11 interviews with local artists, City of Nanaimo staff, Petroglyph Development Group, and local stakeholders. We also had 2 focus groups. So the first was with artists, and then the second was with gallery staff, board members, and other community partners. And then we also hosted a design charrette with them to think about the different spaces that the gallery would need to have. So looking at the community engagement findings, there was almost unanimous agreement that the current art gallery building is too small. And 60% of people that we spoke to considered it a priority to expand the current space. So the downtown location is one of the things which is particularly appreciated by people, with 50% of the survey respondents telling us that this is one of the best things about it. Reconciliation was a big topic, so particularly relating to opportunities to incorporate an honest Nanaimo culture. 1 in 3 participants told us that they want more opportunities for local arts and culture and artists. And also, maybe because of COVID, there's a strong desire for outdoor spaces, so to create a greater sense of connection to Nanaimo's land and water. And accessibility was also a key topic because the current facility doesn't meet the accessibility standards for a fully accessible public building. So based on these findings, and also following the design charrette activity, we found that the gallery would need to have between 18,000 to 25,000 square foot of space. And having this would provide enough space for the following. It would allow for 2 or 3 changing exhibition spaces instead of the current 1 space, because with the current situation, the gallery has 12 weeks of the year where there's nothing on display for the public to view when they're changing exhibitions. It would need 2 or more large program studios, so this would allow for increased community programming, for example, with a focus on well-being and wellness. To reflect the desire for more local arts and culture, there would need to be a regional gallery, providing more opportunities, and also a larger gift shop for more opportunities for artists to sell their work and to increase revenue. Also, having a flexible atrium space could provide views from outside the gallery in, which is something which came up in the community engagement as something that people would like to see. And it would also allow flexible space that could be rented out to other parties. There could be a cafe run by a third party, which would provide additional revenue, and it would drive more visitation and also longer dwell times at the gallery, but also within downtown. And there could be an outdoor space. So answering that desire for more kind of outdoor areas, it could also provide more programming opportunities, and even for things like cedar weaving, which would be great to have that kind of preparation area. So having thought about the needs, Ardell Architecture explored the feasibility of 3 different routes as illustrated on screen here. So the first was looking at renovating the current facility. The second was creating a new build on the current site at 150 Commercial Street. And the third is a new build at a greenfield site that hasn't been built on close to the downtown core. The architectural team found that renovating the current building is not a viable option and that it's technically unfeasible due to numerous complicating factors. So many of these, there's kind of several areas of it, but the most important kind of aspect perhaps is around it needing new foundations, posts and sheer walls, which would be difficult to do and also expensive to retrofit. The only way to make the building fully accessible would be to install a route between the main gallery and art lab, which would take up most of the main gallery space, and that also wouldn't necessarily answer the needs of the rest of the building and the staff areas being fully accessible. And even with these changes, the building wouldn't be able to meet the Class A status for climate and humidity control because the building can't be entirely sealed. So Class A controls are needed to attract many exhibitions, so this would limit in the ongoing and in the future what can take place at the gallery. The team identified, however, that the 2 other routes illustrated here would be feasible, and there are pros and cons to either route. So looking at 150 Commercial Street, big pluses include the central downtown location and its location within the cultural district. A key downside would be that the gallery would need to move during the renovation. And the architectural team estimated that a new build on this site would be approximately $21 million. The third route, as you'll see, it's a conceptual sketch, is a new build on a greenfield site. So this would need to be a park or a waterfront location close to the downtown core. This concept would have that strong connection with land and water and could be really beautiful. A key challenge, however, is that there are few greenfield sites in Nanaimo, so that would be likely to meet all of the criteria. So this broad estimate is slightly lower at $19.5 million, and this reflects that it wouldn't require demolishing an existing building, but it's also worth recognizing that this is just conceptual and it's not looking at a particular site. Importantly, we also considered how an expanded art gallery would support the Nanaimo City Plan. We found that it could support each of the 5 goals, particularly Goal 3 for a healthy Nanaimo and the target recreation, culture and wellness, and also Goal 5 for a prosperous Nanaimo. For a green Nanaimo, the future gallery could be a green, energy efficient and climate change resilient building. A green building would also open up the project to new funding sources. For Connected Nanaimo, the facility would be fully accessible and therefore contribute to Goal 2.4 by ensuring equitable mobility for everybody, which in turn could contribute to social inclusion. For a healthy Nanaimo, a larger facility would allow for that extended programming that I mentioned. And there's extensive research about the links between participation in arts and culture and health, for example, mental health and then also dementia. For an empowered Nanaimo, an expanded gallery could contribute to Goal 4.2 for equity and inclusivity even more strongly. The welcoming space could be designed following universal design principles. It would also allow for a wider range of cultural programs and also have flexible spaces. Importantly, it would celebrate and honour Indigenous culture with a focus on Nanaimo. And last but not least, a prosperous Nanaimo, a future gallery would contribute to placemaking and investment attraction, Goal 5.5, particularly in relation to downtown revitalisation, driving visitation and spending, and also contributing to tourism. Lastly, an expanded gallery would provide more income to local artists, supporting Goal 5.2 for human, social, and economic capital. I'll pass back to Carolyn.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks again to the city for your support of this first phase of the feasibility study. Nanaimo Art Gallery Society, our board, staff, and community members are committed to realizing this future Nanaimo Art Gallery, a purpose-built Class A facility that meets the needs of a thriving mid-sized urban community. We've been successful in accessing grant funding for the next stage of the feasibility study. With support from Canadian Heritage through the Cultural Spaces Fund, we've got a grant for $61,750, and then the BC Arts Council has come and given us another $25,000 through their infrastructure program. The Nanaimo Art Gallery has engaged Nordicity to continue with this feasibility study work, and this will include continued community engagement, the development of Class D estimates. We'll be working with Global Philanthropic to explore the capacity for a capital campaign. And we'll also analyze other funding sources and funding opportunities. We're working with the city's real estate section and Bill Corson on a site options analysis. So that will include developing evaluation criteria for the perfect site, reviewing property information, and helping to identify some preferred sites. We've already learned so much from this first phase, and we're excited to continue the work and make further steps to realize our goals. We look forward to coming back this time next year, telling you more about what we've learned, and in the meantime, we'll be asking you to be involved in our community engagement and work together with us to help realize the goal for the future Nanaimo Art Gallery. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong has a question.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. My question is, when you're doing your next report, will it show what the operating costs are and what the revenues are to see if they offset each other?
Yeah, so part of the next phase is looking at specific sites. And so this is a really critical aspect with the operating costs. And so when we have a specific site, then you can start to really think about the specifics of the revenue. So for the work that we've done so far, we looked at a high level, thinking through the different kind of aspects of the project, and we think it would work well according to a break-even model.
Thank you.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I'm just wondering if you can clarify, you mentioned Class A and now you mentioned Class D, and what the differences are.
I can speak to Class A because that's an art gallery term. So Canadian Heritage and galleries and museums are given a credit or a kind of criteria of Class A when they're a climate-controlled facility. So when we can assure that our humidity and our temperature stay constant, and then that would protect any art or any, like the museum has those standards for their collection. So we can also borrow works from the National Gallery or the Vancouver Art Gallery because we'd be able to say, this is the kind of climate we have, we can protect your collections, and then also we hold the art collection for the people of Nanaimo, so we can ensure that that collection's going to be preserved for generations.
Thank you. And I just want to say I'm very pleased to see the inclusion of local artists. I think that's really important if we go into expansion. Thank you.
Yeah, we would really like to have this space that was, as well as our main exhibition spaces, a third space dedicated to regional artists.
Thank you.
Answer about Class D?
Oh, with Class D estimates, I don't have the exact definition to hand, but in terms of the estimate classes, obviously A would be more accurate, and going down to D, it's an initial indication of the cost, but the idea for that, looking at the siting study, is so that we can kind of look at, when prioritising, what's the kind of most feasible option and what would be preferable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation. Are we at the point of figuring out who and how we're going to pay for this? I know we have to figure out sizes and everything else, but is there granting abilities from the federal government province to actually build this building? Is the idea that you'd be coming to us and looking for possibly some funding to get the design done and then go after funding to actually build it? Are we kind of at that stage yet, or?
We're not at that stage, but maybe this time next year we will. A lot of our work with Global Philanthropic will tell us again about the capacity for a capital campaign and also look at the other funding. But ideally, we'd have funding from 3 levels of government for a project like this. And Canadian Heritage came to us when we were calling for proposals for the feasibility study and saw that we were doing studies and said we should be supporting this and we should be supporting it from the first phase, and it's more likely for you to get funding from us further down the road if we've been a contributor involved in this whole project from the start.
Can I ask a question about placemaking? It's a term I haven't seen before. And I understand sort of where you're coming at in here. I've looked it up online, what placemaking is, and mostly it's in the design of the building that incorporates input from the community and stuff like that. But the building's already going to be designed. So how does placemaking play a role in the further development of it?
You go first.
The building hasn't been designed, so that would be like further down the road, and there'd be involvement from Snuneymuxw and from the whole community in what a art gallery could look like. We'd like to be really innovative and think that that might not be like every other art gallery you see. Jesse Birch, our curator, does amazing work, and everything we do at the gallery is about this place. So our exhibitions aren't what you're going to see somewhere else. Even if we borrow an exhibition, he places it in Nanaimo and relates it to our community in the programming, and we also bring in local artists. So it's going to be about here and about the people in the community. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I can add to placemaking, and it's one of those terms, it's kind of in flux, it's starting to be used, and as to my knowledge, there's not just one definition, but really it relates to what is it that makes a place special or unique? What is it, when you think of a place and stuff comes to mind, like what are the kind of landmarks or what's the feeling that that place gives you? And in some ways it overlaps with branding, but then branding is kind of too commercial because it's not only to do with the kind of monetary side of it, it's the kind of intangible things, like what makes a community good to live in. And so with focus on placemaking in the gallery, it would just be building more strongly on the things which are really unique about arts and culture here, specifically in Nanaimo, not anywhere else, even on the island or in BC or Canada, and looking to kind of incorporate that strongly within the kind of brand of the city. So it's one of those kind of intangible things, but ideally it should be part of everything, trying to think about it in that way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Not seeing any other questioners. Appreciate the presentation tonight. Very kind and very informative. Look forward to seeing you next year. And that's not a political joke. No. Thank you very much. The next is a presentation from Mosaic Forest Management. Molly Hudson, welcome. Nice to see you.
Good evening, councillors, mayor. Nice to see you all. Thank you for having me here today. I appreciate the time. I'm here today to just provide a general update on Mosaic's activities. We have a couple of exciting projects, a few recent announcements that I wanted to highlight here as well. So I'll get right to it. My name is Molly Hudson. I'm the Director of Sustainability at Mosaic. You would have seen our big sign up just a block away. So again, would like to acknowledge the territory of the Snuneymuxw people for this meeting, for our operations, and for our office over across the way. I can see that the crowd was here for my presentation, hey? That's all right, the pressure's off, pressure's off. All right, so let's get into it. So I'll just start with a reminder about who Mosaic is. We are Canada's largest private timberland producer. We also operate on a number of Crown licenses, including a tree farm license up around Campbell River and onto the mainland coast. Over half of our production comes from a unionized workforce. We're a small staff at Mosaic, around 200 people, but we manage thousands of contractors, and around half of those are unionized workers. We're a big contributor locally to the economy. A study done in 2019 found that our contributions to this region, the city of Nanaimo, the municipality of Nanaimo, through our supply chain was around $44 million per year. And the forest sector in the city of Nanaimo contributes around $190 million per year to the city of Nanaimo.
Ms. Hudson, I just wonder if someone could close the door so we can hear you. They've had their turn. It's your turn now.
All good. They're probably talking about my presentation, so it's fine. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We're proud to be heavily invested in technology, both to improve safety and efficiency across our operations, and a great example of that is our leadership participation in Canada's digital super cluster, where we're working to automate and monitor our activities in the woods through satellite connectivity and some real-time management of our machines who operate out in the woods. So some exciting advances on the digital technology supercluster front. On this slide, you'll see a few of our certifications. Third-party certification is a big part of our business. It provides assurances to those we work with that we are committed to a system and a framework that has third-party auditing. So in particular, I want to highlight our Progressive Aboriginal Relations certification that's through the Canadian Council of Aboriginal Business. We're silver level certified. And that framework really solidifies our commitment to reconciliation, to long-lasting relationships with the First Nations in whose territories we work. And it really, that collaboration, that commitment to reconciliation really crosses throughout our business. All of our departments, all of our people are involved in advancing those relationships with the nations we work with. SFI on the bottom is our forest management certification. It's the standard that really drives our forest policies and practices on a day-to-day basis. And what it does is it provides the assurance through the entire supply chain, all the way to when you buy a stick of lumber at your local hardware store or a box of Kleenex, you know that that fiber was sourced from a sustainably managed forest. So that's a little bit about Mosaic. A few other highlights. We've been operational for over 100 years on the BC coast under various names. We're owned by BC and Canadian public pension funds, so Canadian ownership and an investment in long-term stable returns, which is a really great alignment for a forest management company that thinks in tree lifetimes. So providing that stable fiber supply and stable returns for BC and Canadian pensioners over the long term. And always like to highlight that we supply over 50 mills in BC. Our lumber or our logs are always offered locally first, and we also sell our logs internationally to the States, to China, to Japan, and to South Korea. So lots of locally delivered products here from our forests as well. A couple of highlights about our values as a company, and Mosaic is a younger organization. We were formed in 2019 under the name Mosaic, but we have a long history on the coast and a really a staff filled with lots of experience and knowledge. And so the safety and wellness of our staff and our contractors is our highest priority. It drives everything we do every day. And tied to that is our people, making sure that we're creating a workplace that keeps people engaged and empowered. Sustainability, very close to my heart. We're focused on responsible, science-based forest management and contributing to that science and participating in research to advance that knowledge. Integrity is key to all of our business dealings, all of our relationships with third parties, whether they be communities or governments. And obviously for our shareholders, we are focused on superior performance and providing those returns to our owners and investors over the long time horizon. A couple of highlights I'd like to talk about from the last year. We were recognized as one of BC's top employers, so we were really proud of that. We were acknowledged for the second bullet here as well, our comprehensive diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy, and really expanding the folks that we invite to come work with us in the forest sector, and really bringing new perspectives and innovation by diversifying our workforce and making sure all are welcome at Mosaic. Last year we donated in the neighborhood of $500,000 to various community organizations, big and small, everything from $250 to a local event all the way up to hundreds of thousands of dollars to some of our big partners like the Pacific Salmon Foundation and the Marmot Recovery Foundation. We've also been investing in First Nations scholarships and training programs, and last year that was in the neighborhood of $125,000 to support encouraging Indigenous folks to join us in the forest sector. A project that I particularly wanted to talk about today, because I think it's really exciting, is our Big Coast Forest Climate Initiative. Earlier this year, we announced this carbon crediting initiative. You can see the website on the slide there if you want to read more about it in detail, and it's on our website. But this is an opportunity that we as private landowners really get to take advantage of. And so what it is it's 40,000 hectares across our private timberlands set aside for 25 years to store carbon. We take those carbon credits for not harvesting those 40,000 hectares, and we're able to sell those credits to other organizations that are on their path to net zero. The areas that we've identified for these carbon reserves are primarily mature and old forests, so they haven't been harvested industrially. And an example, as you can see up on the screen, we really tried to find those charismatic old forests that are on our land base that people are interested to see conserved and managed for carbon. So this is a voluntary market initiative. So as we move into the phase of our project where we're marketing this, it's available to any global buyers who have a net zero commitment and they're looking to offset some of their emissions through carbon credits. Luckily, this is a highly desirable product on that voluntary market. So we hope to be able to be selective about the organizations that we partner with to ensure that they truly are on the path to net zero. It is a nature-based solution. It's a forest retention project, and there's a lot of co-benefits around the conservation of wildlife habitat, the protection of community drinking key areas and community drinking watersheds, and great alignment with a number of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We have two project extension partners. You see on the side there, the Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas Innovation Center is a partner who will help us over this 25-year period work with First Nations in whose territory this project exists and talk to those nations about what particularly we should do with these areas at the end of that 25-year time period. So it will really be a nation-by-nation approach led by the IPCA Innovation Center to talk about the future of those areas after the project ends in 25 years. Obviously, the potential is everything from future continuing those carbon initiatives to management that the nation directs us is within their set of objectives. Our second partner for this project is a longtime partner of ours, the Pacific Salmon Foundation. The funding that's generated by this project will support their marine and freshwater climate change research on the BC coast. So really bringing an ocean and water focused element to this project, which is primarily focused on trees and land. And here's a local snapshot. As you can see, this region in general, it's a little bit dark on the screen, but just to give you a sense, the blue areas are part of the carbon project, and they're spread throughout our private land basin. So for areas like the City of Nanaimo's drinking watershed, obviously carbon will support a mixed land use in that area, supporting the supply of clean, safe drinking water to all of the citizens of Nanaimo. And throughout this whole region, there will be carbon credits generated through the protection of these forests for the project length. Another exciting project I'd like to highlight, there's our mayor there speaking to Czech News about an exciting announcement from earlier in August, in which the City of Nanaimo and the Regional District of Nanaimo acquired from Mosaic around 100 hectares to connect the Mount Benson Regional Park and the Westwood Lake Park owned by the City of Nanaimo. So really creating a nice corridor there between the two parks. We're happy to work with both organizations to create that local amenity that was highly used by the public already and now is protected for the benefit of the citizens of Nanaimo and the surrounding areas. So a great announcement there and a good collaboration between the Regional District, our company, and the City of Nanaimo. A few highlights here on recreational access. That's always something that the public wants to talk to us about, getting access for recreational purposes to our private lands. We're doing a whole range of things, and a few just to highlight. A lot of work with VIU classes to provide educational opportunities, to learn about forestry and the other programs that are interested in this local geography. We're partnered with VIU on a number of research projects, including around local climate and weather monitoring. Obviously, our relationship with the Nanaimo Mountain Bike Club has really created an awesome hub of mountain bike trails that are really well managed and available for all members of the public to use, not just members of the Mountain Bike Club. Every year for the last number of years, we've been doing an Earth Day cleanup event, primarily in the areas in the kind of rural forest interface. Great to see a whole cross-section of folks out to support those cleanup events. As always, we share our weekend openings for recreational access for the public on our website, and we just recently announced a number of ATV agreements, so working with local ATV clubs to designate particular areas and particular safety requirements so that they can explore and recreate on our lands on the weekends in a safe and sanctioned way. So I'm really happy to see that multi-year effort of collaborating with those ATV clubs come to fruition with that agreement, and there is an agreement in the Nanaimo area now active. On local activities, one of my favorite things to do is get out in the watershed with City of Nanaimo staff and sometimes some elected folks as well. Most recently, a couple of weeks ago, we had an academic collaborative out there, the For Water Group, talking to City of Nanaimo staff and Mosaic staff about watersheds across Canada and drinking water systems across Canada. So great learnings for all of us there, and great to have tours out in the watershed again after a few years of not being able to take advantage of that opportunity. We've had some great collaborations with the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere Reserve and Research Institute and VIU in supporting some traditional plant workshops, some traditional gardens, and so we had a great workshop earlier this year. One of the things that we've implemented over the last number of years is all of the permit dollars that come in from our firewood permits are being donated back into the community. So earlier this year, we donated $20,000 from those firewood permits that you can get on our website back to the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Central Vancouver Island. So trying to bring those smaller forest products back into a community connection and make sure that local benefits come from that program. And finally, this year, we were really happy to open our 14th campground. It's a little outside the city of Nanaimo at the top of the hump on the way to Port Alberni at Loon Lake, but it's a really beautiful spot, 28 sites open to the public. So through that 14 campground network, we like to be able to invite the public out onto our lands in a sanctioned and responsible way and enjoy some of the nice lakes that we have out there. Finally, what's next for our work with the City of Nanaimo? Ongoing work with the Water Resources staff. We have a great collaboration there, working on watershed access and ensuring that we have a continued clean, reliable water supply. We've worked recently on some educational signs for Harewood Plains to hopefully keep folks on the existing trails and restricting off-road vehicle access, and obviously taking the opportunity to educate folks about that site. And we're also developing some new scholarships at VIU to support diversity, equity, inclusion in the trades, and working on an Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas Planning Certificate as well. So some exciting things in the works to try to get some more students involved in the forest sector at all levels. And that concludes my slides today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hudson. Much appreciated. Councillor Thorpe, although you're not showing up on the screen. Nothing intentional?
No, I'm sure.
Yet.
Thank you very much. Through you, thank you, Ms. Hudson. Really appreciate the information and the update. I did have a question.
Sure.
Excuse me. A minor point, but under recreational access, I'm just curious. Access to the Trans-Canada Trail, or the Great Trail, I think it's referred to as now.
That's right.
Does Mosaic have a policy which ensures public access to various points of the trail, or is that taken on a location-by-location basis?
So we have an agreement for the entire length of the trail with the various districts that manage the trail in those locations. In terms of specific access points, the trail itself is the area that's under agreement. And access points are, let's say informal or through other publicly sanctioned areas.
Okay, thank you. So beyond that, I just would personally like to thank you for what I consider to be responsible forest management that Mosaic seems to demonstrate. I know you take criticism sometimes, and it's not always fair.
Sure.
But
on occasion.
I guess that goes with the job. And,
Sure.
And I also want to comment and thank you for the sizable economic impact that you bring to our local community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Seeing no one else, I'll second Councillor Thorpe's comments, and thank you very much for taking the time to come out tonight and make the presentation. Much appreciated.
Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
The next, again, no, we do not clap, cheer, or otherwise criticize anybody, although you might have a temptation to do so, but thank you. The next item are committee minutes, which are just for receipt. I'm going to call for the motion and for a seconder to adopt consent items and then ask for the removal of any items that people want removed. So, moved, seconded by Councillor Brown, that we approve the consent items, and withdrawal. I understand Councillor Thorpe wishes to vote separately on item 10A3.
Yes, please.
Correct? Anything else? Then I'd call for the vote on the consent items themselves. All those in favor? Any opposed? None? And Councillor Thorpe, did you wish to speak to 10A3?
I wish to speak to it, Your Worship, but I am not going to support it. So if somebody wants to put the motion on the floor, then we can proceed that way.
So, Your Worship, through to Councillor Thorpe, the motion was moved on the entirety of the consent items, and then this is pulled to be voted on separately. So there's no mover and seconder required, but there is a vote required on this motion. So you can speak, Councillor Thorpe, and then the vote will be taken after everyone's done speaking that wishes to.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. So what we're speaking to is that council directs staff to increase the budget for Metro Drive Complete Street Project Phase 2 by $1,400,000 funded from various reserve funds that the city has, which of course come from taxpayers' money. I spoke against this at the committee level, and I just wish to speak against it here at council level. In the past several weeks, I've had many conversations with Metro area residents and businesses. They have serious concerns about this project, not just the construction mess, which is temporary, but the long-term result of what they consider, and I consider, to be harmful effects on traffic flow. Narrowing of streets, elimination of right-hand turn lanes, etc. So I do not support spending any additional money on this project. I don't think it's a good use of taxpayer money, and I don't think it's a project which has a lot of support in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Well, I agree with all the points raised by Director Thorpe. I too share my concerns. However, my concern is if we don't pay the extra money, what happens? So for those, that's the main reason why I'm voting in favor, because I think we do have to finish it, and I don't think it can be finished unless we have those funds. So for those reasons, I'm voting it, although I am opposed to the actual project. Thank you.
That's not working very well because it jumped through Councillor Turley, who wanted to speak.
Well, I was going to speak exactly.
Exactly, and as soon as I touched it, it jumped too. So Councillor Turley, I'm going to turn your mic on, please.
I would just support what Councillor Armstrong said, although I wouldn't mind hearing if there are any items that could be removed from the project to save the 1.4 million. And I think at the last meeting we did discuss the fact that in Phase 1 there was a surplus that was not the same as the deficiency here, but somewhat close to it. But the important thing is are there items in this project that could be removed that would save the 1.4. Thank you.
Mr. Sims, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just briefly to answer the question, we are committed to the contract, and that's the funding in the contract. So this is the result of legitimate additional costs to the contractor. If council were to, well, I guess we don't have much choice, if I'm honest. So any of the opportunity to cut costs, we're really at the beginning of the project, at the design phase, and as Councillor Turley pointed out, the initial phase was $1 million under our estimated budget, and this one was a little bit more. But considering the challenges we've had through construction, supply chain, and all of the things you've heard before, this is not really out of line.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to vote in favor of this, and having spoken to it at the Finance and Audit Committee as well, it's very clear that this extra funding is required of extra work that has been asked, or like there's that retaining wall that has to be built, which is considerable. And so a vote against this is a vote to abandon the project and open the city up to extreme litigation from a number of parties. So we're not in a position to, I think, vote against this thing. To me, the correct way for a council is to affirm this with the votes and not to use this as an opportunity to have a position on something else that is not actually this motion, which is to increase the budget. So I'll vote in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. I will be voting in favor of this as well. This is a project that is almost near completion. As Mr. Sims stated, we have contracts. To abandon it now or to take that position, I don't understand why that would occur. This increase has been driven by costs of suppliers and labor and all the other issues that everybody is having that's in business. So, and unlike Councillor Thorpe, I have heard from people and I have heard from residents in that area who actually enjoy the infrastructure. And I drive down it because my doctor is on Metro Drive, And I see numerous people out there enjoying it in baby strollers, and I've seen wheelchairs, and people, you just feel safer. So I don't mind the narrowing of the streets, and I think it's a great project. So I'm all for it, as I was from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Martman. For what it's worth, I too am going to support the motion without hesitation. I appreciate Council has received some concerns from various people, concerned about the width of the roads, et cetera, but if you've driven in other communities in other parts of the province, lots of roads are fairly narrow and vehicular traffic seems to be able to pass by and get to their destination. Metral Drive was never to be a highway. It is a residential street with commercial buildings at basically either end. And I appreciate the concerns, but I must say I'm of the view that I've always been. We are committed to this. As Mr. Sims has pointed out, we have contractual commitments. But moreover, I'm not prepared to throw the baby out, not with the bathwater per se, but throw the baby out until I see what kind of an adult it grows into. And this project is not finished. And when it is, I would hope, as I've got a $10 bet riding with one particularly vociferous critic, that if he doesn't like it, I'll give him $10. But otherwise, I intend to collect my $10 because once this project is actually finished and people are driving on it, I suspect it will become what is the very reason this city and our staff received 3 separate awards for, and that is because it is a modern street, accessible, providing for safe pedestrian traffic as well as cyclists, and with great respect, a boulevard lined with trees looks very appealing to me. So, if I've inspired anyone else, Councillor Thorpe, once more. You're still on.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. No, I just want to say that I appreciate and understand the comments of my fellow councillors. I know the project is well underway and it basically needs to be completed, but as a matter of principle, I just cannot support spending any additional funds on it. That's my stance. And the other thing I wanted to ask to you is, could I get in on that $10 bet?
Done. All those in favor? And those contrary? Councillor Thorpe. The motion carries. Thank you very much. The next item are delegations unrelated to agenda items and the Nanaimo Youth Services Association Roughing It event. Amy Worth, good evening. And welcome.
I'm sorry, I'm short. Thank you everybody for having me here today. I recognize some friendly faces, so thanks for hearing my speech again. Okay. So, hello, I'm here from Nanaimo Youth Services Association. For those of you that don't know, Nanaimo Youth Services Association has been in the community now for 53 years, serving youth age 15 to 30. We are currently in the process of planning our Roughing It event. So what is Roughing It? Roughing It is a fundraising public awareness campaign where we're asking members of the community, politicians, media, corporate employees, emergency personnel, and youth to spend the night on the street to experience what over 100 youth in Nanaimo face every day. Participants are asked to raise money by getting sponsors to support their night on the street. All proceeds from the event are going into our housing unit, so we're currently looking to add more supports to our current housing units, which house 35 youth, as well as building another housing complex to address the need of the youth on the streets. Corporate teams and individuals will be competing in the event to see who can raise the most money. The public at large is able to donate online to a team, an individual, or to the event directly. The event kicks off on September 23rd at 6 p.m. at Harewood Centennial Park, where we will provide dinner, and the event ends at 7:30 a.m. on the Saturday after a warm and hearty breakfast. The purpose of the event is to create awareness around Nanaimo's large youth homeless population, or the unhoused youth of Nanaimo. Currently, we have over 100 youth who are unhoused in Nanaimo, and that is in Nanaimo alone. The purpose of the event is to have everyone assemble at a safe site where we can address the difference between youth homeless and adult homelessness. We will provide dinner in the park, as well as have the community sleep outside to experience what it's like to rough it. In the morning, we will have breakfast where individuals can share their experiences and what they learned. The overall goal of the fundraising campaign is to raise $50,000 so we can increase our housing supports and build another housing unit. And to conclude the event, we will announce next year's date, as we're hoping this will be an annual one so we can continue addressing the youth need of Nanaimo. As mentioned, dinner will be provided. These numbers, 64% of individuals who participate in the event will be given a bowl of rice and water, 26% will receive a bowl of rice, beans, salad, and a drink, and 10% will receive a full catered meal. These numbers are to illustrate that some of us face greater challenges than others, and that inequality can bring about hunger. During the event, we have a number of features happening. So we're going to have live entertainment. We have a national guest speaker named Skid Row Joe, or Joe Roberts. He's known for pushing a shopping cart across Canada. We have some of our youth who have actually come to us from the streets and are currently housed in our housing units who will be giving testimonials. We will have additional food items for sale for those of you who receive rice and water. We currently have over 50 silent auction donations, and then we're going to be auctioning off a bed and couch for individuals to sleep on, specifically you, Leonard. The purpose of the event is to really draw attention to Nanaimo's youth homeless population and how it differs from the adult homeless population. Many youth are in these circumstances due to the adults around them, not necessarily because of the choices that they have made. All participants will be given a piece of cardboard to experience what it's like for over 100 youth in Nanaimo every single day. The couch and bed that we will offer up for donation the night of is to represent the couch surfers and those that jump from home to home with their friends to illustrate that need as well.
And 1 minute.
Okay. So we wish that you be the change that you want to see in the world. So we're asking that everyone come out and support our event. Again, in the morning, breakfast will be provided to illustrate what individuals have learned, and awards will be given to the teams which raise the most money. So how you can get involved. We're looking to have as many city councils members as possible to come out and support the event. We're looking for pledges for your favorite team or individuals. We're looking for donations for the silent auction, volunteers. If you would like to, you can sponsor youth to sleep outside on your behalf and to follow us on social media and help spread the word. So spend one night living the life of a homeless youth, and let's end youth homelessness together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Worth. Questions from council? Volunteers?
I have a question.
Councillor Martman.
If we wish to donate, thank you for your presentation, by the way, and I think it's a fabulous idea. If you wish to donate for the silent auction, do we just drop it off at the NYSA building?
Absolutely. I'll leave some brochures on the table as well in case you wanted to make a donation online, or if you need to get a hold of me via email or phone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciate the presentation tonight. I don't know that I'd use the phrase looking forward to it, but I anticipate it'll be quite the evening for those who participate. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
The next are reports, consideration of new permissive tax exemptions. Our Manager of Revenue Services, Jamie Slater, is going to provide that, but I just want to say publicly to Ms. Slater on behalf of Council, she is a person who has written numerous letters to various concerned citizens raising the issue of their increased taxes, often based on significant increases in their assessments. They have been thoughtful and polite and responsive, and I just want to thank you publicly for that. Councillor Armstrong.
I need to declare a conflict on the PTE for the Nexus Patient Clinic, as I sit on the board. So I don't know if you want me to remove myself now or later. Now? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the kind words. That was very nice of you. So I'm here to speak to permissive tax exemptions. Every year, we have a June 30th deadline for permissive tax exemption applications that are new for the upcoming tax year. So June 30th this year, we are looking at the 2023 property taxation year and exemption for that year and beyond. This year, we received 4 applications from 4 different nonprofit organizations: Habitat for Humanity, Nexus Patient and Community Care Society, Canadian Mental Health Association Mid-Island Branch, and the Nanaimo Christian School Society. I won't go over the details of every specific check. Sorry, I feel like I'm going in and out. The staff report does outline the specific circumstances around each application, and it recommends approval or denial of the permissive tax exemption. We do make these recommendations based on the city's current grants policy and guidelines document. And of course, the specific circumstances of each application are outlined in the report. So staff are available and happy to answer any questions that come up in discussion.
Thank you very much. I apologize for the mics. They're obviously not used to working for the last 4 weeks. Councillor Brown, I'm just going to...
Thanks, Your Worship. I was just going to move all 4.
Move all 4. As a seconder, Councillor Hemmons, did you wish to speak to it? No. And Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have some questions on number 4. First of all, I believe that they're the only privately operated school within the city limits, or am I incorrect there?
Oh, through the chair to you, Councillor Turley. I do believe they're the only private school operating within the city of Nanaimo boundaries.
And the second question is, my understanding is that the province contributes a per capita fund to private schools based on the same amount of money they'd spend for the most part in the public school system. That used to be the case, and I don't know if it still is or not. Do we know that?
Hello. I wish I could pretend that I know the answer to that. I do believe that usually funding for private schools goes along with the level of funding that they receive on an operational basis. So if they're a 50% school, then they would receive 50% capital funding, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
My understanding is that they do receive some funding based on the number of students, but I could totally be wrong, and that may have changed. If that is the case, then would one have to assume that funding coming from the province through the payments in lieu of tax would cover that? And if that's the case, then perhaps we should be looking at a potential partial exemption based on that number, because that then puts them in line with all the public schools which don't pay taxes. It's just kind of an even playing field. But I won't be. If it's all in one motion, I'm going to be voting against the whole motion. So thank you.
And Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just want to be careful here talking about different funding models, because it's not just about property taxation, but private schools either receive 35% or 50% of the funding of public schools receive. So there is a discrepancy there, but it's outside of the public curriculum. So, but that is not related to property tax. I just want to make that clear.
Thank you. And if I may, notwithstanding my sympathy for the Nanaimo Christian School, this relates to a piece of property that has been purchased separately, does not have facilities on it, and as the staff report points out, frankly, could be sold next year at a profit, potentially at a loss, I suppose, too, by the Nanaimo Christian School. So I think that's the staff reasoning for this, and it is for that reason that I will be supporting the motion, all 4 parts, including the part to deny it, simply because at the present time it is a purchased piece of property, but it is property that is not used, as I understand it, for school purposes at this time, and so therefore does not form a necessary part of the school. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. Just throw another wrench into this. I remember a number of years ago, the very similar issue came up when I was on the Grants Advisory Committee. And it was for a piece of parcel belonging to a Christian school that was used by the public and the school for sports like it was a sports field on it, something like that. One could argue that the property could be used by students even just to walk through and look at the flora and fauna, at which point it would then be educational. So I'm wondering, is it not being used at all? Like no one's allowed in there? I guess would be my question to staff, like why we came up to this position.
I think staff's position right now is that that the grounds aren't being used for educational purposes, and that a permissive tax exemption for a private school that charges separate fees that may not be accessible for everybody in Nanaimo all of the children in Nanaimo and be accessible by everybody in Nanaimo. So in that way, we're looking at it that it wouldn't meet the criteria for a permissive tax exemption. There is one point I was hoping to clarify, if I could. The permissive tax exemption, the building that already exists for the Nanaimo Christian School is 100% exempt. It's under the community charter. It comes straight from BC Assessment. They're exempt under, code number 83. It's 100% exempt. So we're just talking about just the new piece of property.
Thank you very much. And it occurs to me also, I believe the Nanaimo Montessori School is likewise within city limits.
Yeah.
At least one of them, I believe. In any event, if there are no further speakers,
Your Worship, I just have something to add because Councillor Turley is opposed to number 4. Because the motion was moved and seconded all together, you can still vote on them, Sari Adams. So I would suggest you vote on 1.
I'd be happy with that.
Okay.
All right, we're voting on number 1, which is the tax exemption for Habitat. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Voting on the exemption for Nexus Patient and Community Care. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. The next is the Canadian Mental Health Association. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. And finally, the Nanaimo Christian School. All those in favor, which would mean a denial. And those opposed? Councillors Bonner and Turley. Motion carries. Thank you very much. If someone can let Councillor Armstrong back in. Thank you, Mr. Sims. The next is the Boxwood Road Multi-Purpose Facility.
And Your Worship, I just wanted to note it's an actual wiring problem with the microphone where Ms. Slater is sitting. So if staff could use a different microphone and not sit at that table. So it's not her, it's the wiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll pass this very quickly over to Mr. Rose and Mr. Rosen to introduce the topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosen. Mr. Rose, good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. So, during the summer, the city undertook the construction of the Boxwood multi-purpose walking and cycling facility. That involved the installation of barriers and paint along Boxwood Road to create a combined facility. That area along Boxwood had lacked any sort of walking or cycling facility and had been subject to considerable controversy over the years because of that. The installation of the facility this summer created some concern among several of the adjacent businesses. I guess it's my mic as well. So it created some concern among several of the adjacent businesses that opposed it. Now, following the initial installation of the barriers, we worked with those businesses to make adjustments to the design to eliminate operational impacts while maintaining a suitable walking and cycling facility. So we've made those adjustments now, and we believe that we've eliminated any operational impacts to the businesses. But we also understand that there's maybe still some opposition in principle to the facility. And so we wanted to provide council with a bit of the background and an update on the project, just in case there was an appetite to either ask questions or in the future make a decision on the project. So we'll open it up to any questions. We have Mr. Rose here, and myself, we're open to any sort of questions on the project.
Councillor Thorpe, and then Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. So not too long ago in the meeting, we were discussing Metral and the fact that that project has moved ahead and is in fact almost finished, and it's basically too late to backtrack on that. So my opinion on this project is that we need to look very carefully at what we're doing in this area before we proceed too much further. And I certainly have concerns on this. And my first question, and I mean this seriously, is who and when did we decide that a road through a major industrial park would now be called a multi-purpose active mobility facility? I don't recall making that decision or giving approval for that, and I'm not trying to put staff on the spot or criticize staff, but this is news to me, that an industrial park is now an active transportation mobility facility. It's having serious ramifications on the businesses in an area which is primarily based on business. We're told that this was done so that people could use Boxwood instead of Bowen Road. But not too long ago, we upgraded our cycling, walking pathways at the north end of Bowen Road to some disruption of traffic flow there, I might add. So I'm really not clear what we're doing in this area. And I think we need to slow down and take a very careful look at what is our philosophy, where are we going to build these facilities, and to what end. So I have real concerns on this. I recognize it's just an update today, Your Worship, but let's not go too far down this road, no pun intended, unless we're very clear on what our priorities are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Bonner, and then Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Worship. I'm very familiar with this piece of road. I drive it almost every second day. I've been watching it over the years. I guess my first question is, when we first took out the parking on the west side, why did it take over a year to start putting the infrastructure in so that there was a walking area? Do we know why it took so long?
Mr. Rose.
Through your worship, unfortunately, that was just a product of capacity. You know, we were able to install the no stopping signage very quickly. We have staff that can do that. We actually did start to lay out the line work. I don't know if anybody ever saw the ghosting in of the line. And then between staff and contractor resources, we just got bogged down and couldn't deliver it as quickly as we had aspired to.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious as why, because I think what's happened here is when we took out the parking on that side, and I noticed that the painted lines which delineated the parking were basically the exact same width as the bollards are and the barriers are now. It's literally right on the same line. So what we did is we took what was at that point a 3.6 meter road, and we took away the parking. So in theory, to people's perception, this now became a better part of a 5.6 meter road. And you can go down that and not a problem. When we put the bollards and the cement abutments back in, we literally put it back the way it was prior to taking out the parking. Like the lengths, the widths of the road are exactly the same, 3.6 meters, because I know that because I went out and measured them 2 days ago. And so but the concept here is we now took something that was parking, and cars would come down there, they'd see the cars, they'd avoid them, and they'd stay in the lane. And then we put this cement abutment, which people tend to stay away from. And I think that's where the issue came, is they're saying it's too narrow, when it is exactly the same down to the inch as what it was before. And so, and even on the other side of the road, same measurements are there, and there's parking on the other side of the road. So when we're basically fixing a mistake that was made decades ago when this thing was first set up, right? So we're trying to create a pathway, and because I regularly use this road, and I see this road, and during the pandemic, I was watching people walk this road all the time. And it's an easy way to get from where the houses are to the grocery store that's on Dufferin. And so they're constantly going there, but they're walking on the grass, or they're walking around the other cars, or avoiding traffic, that sort of thing. So creating a safe passage for people to walk and bike at the same time is a good thing. Now, with the abutments, what happens if we were to take the parking off the east side of the road and then move the yellow line a foot over, making both sides much bigger, and we still have the opportunity to create a walking path? Because right now it's parking over there, and we're not necessarily responsible for parking. And every one of those factories and other places should have enough parking spaces for their employees, that sort of thing. Or they can park on the side street. So is that something we've considered to mitigate the idea? And I went down there as I was measuring, and trucks are running into this thing, and I'm seeing great big tire marks on it because they're coming out of the places and they're not looking. And so they hit these things with the cars, and they back up, and then they go around it. And I do notice that it's changing weekly. Things come and go on a regular basis. So it's a transition period. I get that. So have we looked at the possibility of just taking parking completely off the street so we have enough room for everybody?
Through your worship. Through your worship. Removing parking from the east side of the street as well has not been something we've considered to this point. If council wished for us to explore that, then that's something.
I'm sorry, Your Worship. I'm sorry, Mr. Rose. Could you go to the podium? We seem to be having some problems with those microphones.
Check. Removing parking from the east side of the road is not something we've considered to this point, but it's definitely something that if we were asked to, we could explore that. We did do a parking study prior to all of this work and determined that there currently is demand in the area for parking. I mean, I think we can all acknowledge that, and that the capacity on the east side is adequate right now. So it's something we can look at, but we do have a demonstrated demand that we would need to manage.
Okay.
Councillor Armstrong.
No, thank you. I guess I share the same concerns. I've been out there numerous times meeting with the business people and talking to people. My concern is the motion was for a buffered pedestrian zone. It was never for a bicycle zone, so that was one of my big concerns. My other concern is, and you'll notice I have a notice of motion later for this to be studied further, is that we're digging up behind the businesses right now. You know, to me, that makes the most sense where it's safest to have a cyclist path as well as have a pedestrian path. This is an industrial area. There's large trucks in there. They have huge blind spots. I just looked at the last 3 cyclist fatalities where trucks turning right because they can't see. They're in the zones. Second issue I have with the way that this presently is set up is it does not conform with the Motor Vehicle Act nor regs, so the cyclist will automatically be at fault every single time if there's an accident, so that's something that needs to be looked at. I saw the letter from WorkSafe BC that says the city will accept liability now because some of the trucks can't turn into the businesses, and that's been proven. So we now have the liability, so I would like, that's all part of my motion later. I think this needs to be thought out a lot further. I think there needs to be more consultation with cyclists, pedestrians, truck drivers, businesses. There needs to be a lot more. And I know some people think that it's too expensive to put in the path behind, but that's a political decision to be made by this table. And that's something I would like to see come forward is what would the cost be, because it removes everybody away from the traffic. And we forget the industrial zone was here long before anything else, and they've paid a lot of tax dollars to the city. And I'd certainly hate to see the businesses leave because they can't afford to stay and do business. I've already heard of 2 businesses that have lost business because their truck drivers refuse to drive in there. So I do have a motion coming later, and we'll see what happens the following week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm hearing 2 different things. I'm hearing that trucks can't turn, and I'm hearing that staff has worked with businesses to alleviate the operational issues. So which one is it?
Through your worship, so as Councillor Bonner highlighted, there has been some evolution from the introduction of the barriers to start with. They were laid out and installed, and we've since been made aware from the businesses of which ones were creating some problems for them. We've gone back out and either removed or shrunk or rearranged to work with each of the businesses that raise these concerns. The last conversation we had with them, there was conversation, I think it was on the 10th, it's in the report, I don't remember the exact date, but for the 5 businesses, we were under the impression that we had resolved the concerns to maintain operational requirements. There was one further one that we still have an ongoing discussion with, and we're just waiting for some feedback. But we are continuing to sort of shuffle the blocks around to resume or to return the operational characteristics from beforehand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe's asked to speak, and I'm certainly going to let Councillor Thorpe speak, but I would remind Council this is a matter for information, and Councillor Armstrong has put forward a notice of motion, so I don't want to debate this thing to death tonight. It's probably the subject of future debate. Councillor Thorpe, please.
No, thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to actually make that same point. I think this topic warrants a lot further examination and discussion. And I was just going to reference Councillor Armstrong's upcoming notice of motion, which I think would speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rosen, Mr. Rose, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation tonight. The next is the fees and charges housekeeping amendment bylaws. Ms. Gurry, I think Ms. Robertson's going to deal with that. Shall I just invite her up to the mic and save you having to say anything?
Exactly. That would be great. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Ms. Robertson. Appreciate it. Good evening.
Good evening. The bylaws before council this evening are a result of the need to add a fee for someone who wishes to receive a hard copy of the city plan, which was recently adopted. And so currently, in the absence of specifically identifying a fee, the default category within the development services fees and charges is the other documents category, whereby it would default to a flat rate of $10. So this is problematic for a couple of reasons, and the first being is it conflicts with the other charges that we charge for other hard copies of like documents and other bylaws, as well as the charge through the provincial Freedom of Information and legislation, or the legislation for the Freedom of Information, where they are charged 25 cents a copy. So even though citizens can download it for free or view it on the website, and we do certainly make provisions for people to come in and view it at City Hall, we understand that the city plan is a very important strategic policy document, and we want to treat it the same as we do the zoning bylaw and offer it as on a cost-neutral basis. We found a commercial printer that would do this for $40, which would be a copy of the plan and including the maps, or $70 that also includes all the appendices. So if council was supportive of doing that, it also leads into a few other amendments as a result of it, because there's 3 bylaws: the Development Approval Procedures and Notification Bylaw, Building Bylaw, and Subdivision Bylaw, that all reference the Development Services Fees and Charges Bylaw, of which we would be transferring over through this amendment. I know it sounds kind of complicated to do one little thing. The only other housekeeping amendment before council pertains to the subdivision control bylaw, where we're proposing to remove schedules G and H, because both of those are application forms and they really shouldn't be a part of a bylaw anyways, but on them they identify outdated fees that conflict with what is actually charged in the current development fees. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown?
I do have a question. Unlike a zoning bylaw that changes fairly frequently, I'm just thinking about an email we received around public access, and I know it's available online. I was just wondering, is it unheard of to print out a few copies and have them at each of the public library branches around town?
No, not at all. And in fact, to get this cost, we would need to purchase 10 at a time, but we could certainly provide those at the libraries. I mean, we've offered to have them for viewing as well at City Hall, but some people really want that hard document in their hand.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That was just my question, a thought that I had, and if when there's no other questions, I'm happy to read them.
Councillor Bonner?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 3 questions. One is specifically to what we're talking about here. The other 2 are on some of the actual fees. And I was wondering if this is or not the place to talk about the actual fees, considering they're in the bylaw.
This is really pertaining to only one specific fee. I know we're just taking the opportunity to move them over because the goal, as council's probably seen from some previous bylaw revisions, is that we're trying to develop one comprehensive fees and charges bylaw, but recognizing that those fees do need to be looked at in the very near future. So we've got that slotted for the latter part of 2022 and early part of 2023 to actually take a very fulsome look at some of the fees throughout the city.
Okay, I'll ask those two separately, just in case, for whatever reason, I'm not around. So my question here is regarding this particular thing is, I thought we were pulling everything fees out of the bylaws to put them in a schedule that we could change on a fairly regular basis without having to go through the bylaw process. Because we're kind of putting these into a bylaw. Because I noticed that in the on attachment 2, right at the very bottom, it says land title cost recovery fees to be recovered in accordance with the Land Title and Survey Authority fee schedule as the province. So the province has a schedule of fees, which they can probably change at a whim, I'm guessing. But we put in all our fees into a bylaw, which means we have to go through the entire bylaw process if we want to change one fee.
They're already currently in the development services fees and charges bylaw, so it's already in a bylaw. We're just simply moving them all over so that they're in one comprehensive fees and charges bylaw. Again, there was no other analysis done on anything outside of just accommodating a fee for the city plan and just moving them over so that they're actually all in a one-stop shop bylaw.
Yeah, I just thought we remember the conversations, we were going to take them out of a bylaw and put them into a schedule so that they could be changed on as needed. But I'm guessing that's not, obviously that's not
the fees and charges bylaw actually, it consists of a schedule that you can change all those fees at various times, typically in an alphabetical order, but it is a schedule attached to the bylaw.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
And Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you. I would move that fees and charges bylaw 2022 number 733.6.03, a bylaw to include development service fees within the fees and charges bylaw, pass first reading.
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
I would move that the fees and charges bylaw 2022 number 7336.03 pass third reading. Second reading.
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
And I'd move that fees and charges bylaw 2022 number 7336.03 pass third reading.
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
3 more bylaws to go.
I know. Just scrolling to make sure I had them all. The mountain is very high. I would move that the development approval procedure and notification bylaw amendment bylaw 2022 number 7356, a bylaw to update the reference to the fees and charges bylaw, pass first reading.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I would move the development approval procedures and notification bylaw amendment bylaw 2022 number 7356 pass second reading.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And I would move the development approval procedures and notification bylaw amendment bylaw 2022 number 7356 pass third reading.
Seconded Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
I would move the building bylaw amendment bylaw 2022 number 7224.04, a bylaw to update the reference to the fees and charges bylaw, pass first reading.
Seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I would move that building bylaw amendment bylaw 2022 number 7224.04 pass second reading.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
I would move that building bylaw amendment bylaw 2022 number 7224.04 pass third reading.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. And finally,
And I would move that subdivision control amendment bylaw 2022 number 3260.07, a bylaw to remove schedules G and H, pass first reading.
seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
I would move that subdivision control amendment bylaw 2022 number 3260.07 pass second reading.
Seconded Councillor Hemmons. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And I would move that subdivision control amendment bylaw 2022 number 3260.07 pass third reading.
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next item is D, Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 435740 Halliburton Street. Mr. Holm, good evening, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Your Worship. This is an application, a development variance permit application, request to vary a side yard setback, the south side yard, from 1.5 to 0.5 meters. And this would allow the completion of a dwelling unit that's currently under construction on the property to continue. If you could bring up the context map to start, that would identify the property location. This is at 740 Halliburton. You can see on the overhead there. Thank you. And then if you could bring up the site survey attachment D, that will identify the variance.
Jeremy, Mr. Holm, I can barely hear you over here. I'm just wondering if you could speak a little louder in there. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Ms. Gurry. So the property that was identified overhead, 740 Halliburton, is subject of a development variance permit application. The request is to vary the south side yard setback as identified on the overhead there from 1.5 to 0.5 meters, and that would allow the completion of a dwelling unit that's under construction on the subject property to be fully reconstructed on the existing foundation. The property was is subject of a building permit application for renovation that exceeded the scope of the building permit application, and the applicant has since had to request a variance to complete construction, the reconstruction of the dwelling. It's quite an old dwelling from the early 1900s, so the siting doesn't reflect current bylaw requirements. And if you could please bring up building elevations attachment E, you'll see what's proposed to be constructed there. The south elevation there, you can see with no windows in it, is what is proposed adjacent to the south side yard where the variance is requested. Notification's been complete, and the variance is up for council's consideration tonight. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any questions. Councillor Hemmons, sorry.
No, that's okay, thank you. I'm actually curious, what would happen if, I'm going to support staff's recommendation on this, but what happened if we said no? The house is already built.
The applicant would have to, I guess, reevaluate their options. They probably have to look at reducing the scale of the dwelling back to what it was previously. Largely, though, the request resulted in, so that the property is protected under the Local Government Act under Section 911 because it's legal non-conforming, so it existed where it is prior to zoning requirements to be set back 1.5 meters from the property line. So it would be challenging to resite the dwelling. We'd have to work with the applicant, and there's been some work going on for a number of years with the applicant looking at other avenues such as Board of Variance. There was a request made there that was denied previously to try and get the dwelling unit complete. It's quite substantially far along in reconstruction at this point.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, I'll move the recommendation.
Sorry, but firstly, is there anyone here who wishes to speak with respect to development variance permit application number DVP 435 740 Halliburton Street? I'm not seeing anyone. Councillor Hemmons, you're moving the recommended motion. Seconded Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is rezoning application number RA 479-2086 and 2090 East Wellington Road. Mr. Holm again, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And if you could please bring up the context map to start overhead. It'll identify the property location here. Property on East Wellington Road, so that's on the west side of the Nanaimo Parkway, as you can see there. The application is to rezone the property from AR1, which is a rural resource zone, to I3, which is high-tech industrial, and the with an added site-specific use of data center. If you could please bring up the conceptual site plan, it'll identify will demonstrate a concept plan that was developed for the site. Again, this is rezoning from AR1 to I3, high-tech industrial, with site-specific use as well for data center. Although the applicant is proposing data center use and has demonstrated that use in this concept plan, all of the other uses provided for in the I3 zone would also be supported if this zoning rezoning is approved. So supports a number of industrial uses on the property compatible with the city plan, the OCP designation, which is light industrial. So consistent with the city plan, the concept demonstrates the use of the property as proposed, meeting the constraints on the site, such as a wetland that's sited to the north of the site there. The conceptual site plan also demonstrates road networking options that would support the connection of East Wellington to Northfield at a future time through adjacent property. The applicant has provided a community amenity contribution proposal consistent with Council's community amenity contribution policy, which is $34 per square meter of building area that would, based on this concept, would be around $629,000. That's based on this concept. Ultimately, that would depend on what was developed on the property at the end of the day. Subsequent development approvals will be required if the property is rezoned, including lot consolidation and then development permit, and followed by building permit. A number of conditions are recommended to be secured through the rezoning. They're outlined in the staff report. These would include the community amenity contribution, along with step code commitment, a road dedication, road reserve covenant, an access restriction, tree protection covenant, noise abatement requirements, as well as lot consolidation. Happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Holm. I'm curious more than anything on the conceptual site plan, attachment C. On the right-hand side of the property, there's a future Northfield connector option that goes through the wetland. And I'm just wondering, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, through Your Worship, that is actually probably the least likely alignment option, although the environmental qualitative values of the wetland haven't been fully reviewed at this time. The more likely option is farther to the west, but at this plan demonstrates that both options are feasible based on the development of this property. Of course, before any decision was made, if consideration was given to option B on the east side of the property, definitely the wetland would have to be fully evaluated and that considered in any development of road there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no further questions for staff, Councillor Brown, please.
I would move that zoning amendment bylaw 2022, number 4500.200, to rezone 2086 and 2090 East Wellington Road from rural resource AR1 to high-tech industrial I3 with an additional site-specific use to allow a proposed data center. Pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
I would move that zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.200 pass second reading.
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
I would move that council direct staff to secure the conditions related to zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.200 as outlined in the conditions of rezoning section of the staff report dated 2022 August 29th, should council support the bylaws at third reading.
Again, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is rezoning application number RA 475-444-450-500 Comox Road, 55 Mill Street and 1 Terminal Avenue. That's a mouthful. Mr. Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, that is a mouthful. Thanks. I won't repeat that, but the address. But if you could please pull up the context map on the screen overhead. That's attachment A. So it's actually a number of properties, as the long list of addresses suggest, and it's located between Comox Road and the Millstone River, and adjacent to Terminal Avenue, Pearson Bridge, to the east. So it's the former site of, or I guess the existing site of the Howard Johnson Hotel, which isn't operating there currently, but a very prominent site in the city. If you could please bring up a conceptual site plan, I'll speak to that a little bit. So the request is to rezone the property from a number of existing zones. They're outlined in the staff report. I won't list them off. To an amended comprehensive district zone 7, CD7, and that's to facilitate a mixed-use residential, commercial, and hotel development and subdivision. So this is a comprehensive planned development for quite a significant site in town, a gateway site to the downtown. And the concept plan that's been developed has informed the zoning, the comprehensive development zoning that's proposed. And the concept plan reflects the prominence of the site and responds well to policy direction set by the city plan, as well as the site constraints, and as well as delivering some significant public benefits. So if you could please bring up attachment D, we'll have a look at the conceptual renderings there, which give an idea of the context and what's proposed on site there. So the concept plan that was submitted proposes how the lots could be developed under the CD7 zone. What's shown here is approximately 760 residential units on the site as a whole, as well as a hotel and more than 1,000 square meters of commercial retail space as well. What was also identified, and if you could bring up attachment E, was on the site plan you probably picked up on, was dedication of a park area fronting the Millstone River, along with park improvements and a connection of an active transportation link to the waterfront walkway. So a significant active transportation improvement and some improvements to the park space that result in a net environmental benefit, considering the current condition there. And this site represents a transition from sort of an urban coastal area towards a more upstream, more sensitive riparian environment, but some significant public and environmental enhancements here proposed through this park dedication. Obviously, a number of technical documents were provided to support what's proposed here. Those included an environmental assessment, traffic impact assessment, archaeological impact assessment, and a civil servicing assessment as well. A number of conditions are recommended to be secured through the rezoning. Those are outlined in detail in the staff report, but they include community amenity contribution, which includes the park dedication and park improvements, among other things. A step code commitment in line with council's step code rezoning policy, as well as road dedication, public access secured through right-of-way, and as well as off-site works to support the development. the staff support the concept as presented here, and based on the information provided, it demonstrates that the site can be used for the use intended and the density proposed, and that the site is consistent with the policy in place and would provide a much needed addition to housing in the area, as well as some significant improved linkages to our beautiful waterfront walkway and the active transportation network there. I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Mr. Holm. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I was just wondering if the traffic plan will be available for council to view, because it wasn't attached.
Sorry, pardon me, I didn't.
The traffic assessment?
Oh, is it available? Yes, it would be through our What's Building on the city's website.
So, but would it be available that you could send it to council so we can view it?
Yes, we can share that.
And then my second question is, actually, maybe I'll just wait for the developer because it can go to him. Thank you.
All right. Any further questions, Mr. Holm, before we hear from the delegation? Not seeing anybody. We have Dean Strongatharm, Brad Martin, and Frank D'Ambrosio. Mr. Martin's going to remain shyly in the background tonight. Mr. Strongatharm, Mr. D'Ambrosio, welcome. You have
Mayor Krogh, members of council, my name is Dean Strongatharm. I am a development consultant for this project and former resident of Nanaimo, and it's always a pleasure to come back to this wonderful city. Jeremy has given a good overview, and I think the staff report also very clearly explains what the project is about, but essentially it is a very strategic site, some 7+ acres of land, and it is very much the gateway leading into downtown Nanaimo. We do have a little bit of a presentation. Some of those slides you might have seen, but I think if I could let the master planner, Frank D'Ambrosio, perhaps go through them quickly, and then obviously we'd be available for any questions that you may have. So I think with that, I will turn it over to Frank to give you just a brief overview of the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. D'Ambrosio, please.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeremy did such a great job presenting the project. It's kind of redundant, but I was prepared to do it in 3 minutes. And I think a project of this scope deserves a second look by you, and also looking at the planning report. Because we took it as a very serious and significant termination of and completion of downtown Nanaimo. The site is an important one. In your recent policy documents, it's been identified as part of downtown, and that's very logical. So bringing a large population base to close proximity to downtown is very important. The site is very interesting because it didn't exist some time ago, and we always research things right back to pre-colonial times to see how the land actually got to be where it got to. So its last iteration, it was actually a reshaping of an island off of the mouth of the original Mill Creek, and that was filled in and reshaped a few times for various industrial activities. And to this day, it remains what was created in the early 70s. However, the riverfront and the waterfront, which it actually is, it's kind of in between, was neglected. It was really the back end of the parking lot. And so it's been asphalt paving up to whatever edge was created. So there's really no natural edge except by accretion. To the north, there's some town housing, and further down Mill Street, some new housing. So this housing enclave has begun to take shape with those townhouses. And this project will complete the network of streets bringing Mill Street up. There's really no inspiration to be gained from the existing. So we generated a series of urban design principles on which to base our design based on city policy and good community planning principles. Everything from a variety of housing types, connecting it well to the surroundings so it's a walking neighborhood, traffic calming, the commemoration of its indigenous history, and to leave behind a much richer landscape than we found. So here you are, you've seen some images. We take very seriously its connection to Maffeo Sutton Park, and the riverfront, waterfront, is going to be renaturalized. It never was natural because it wasn't there, but we're going to create it and in the spirit of its original condition, or the original conditions further down. Phase 1 will include a new hotel, which will be the cornerstone, and the mix of housing is in behind on a complete network of streets and pedestrian paths up to your current shared streets standards. The project will be the gateway site, as Jeremy mentioned, and we're very happy to present it because we think it's a significant transformation of this site, and the best I've seen so far, if I do say so myself, from all the many iterations of designs that have been applied to this site. I think this one is the most suitable and most consistent with the city's intentions for the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong.
I just have one question when it comes to the traffic coming in and out. Is it all going to be off of Mill Street and you're going to connect up to Prudhoe?
No, if we went back actually to the site plan, there are two internal streets that connect to Comox Road. One is a gazetted road, and the other one is a private road, but publicly accessed. So there are actually two additional accesses to Comox Road.
And will they both be having lights?
The westerly road will be right-hand only, and the easterly road, which is the main public road coming up from the waterfront, is traffic light.
Thank you.
Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. The city's about 6 months away from developing a tenant relocation policy. There will be residents displaced with this development. Would you consider incorporating a tenant relocation policy in this development or in your negotiations?
Yes, through you. Yes, so there's 8 units in 2 buildings, of which currently there are 7 occupied. There has been my understanding is there has been a fairly high turnover of tenants over the years. And we are looking at that project probably about 2 years away before there'd be any consideration for demolition, subject to obviously approvals. One of the things for sure is that we would be giving ample notice, and I think although we've not developed any specific policy with respect to that, but if you follow, for example, the TAP, the Tenant Assistance Program that I'm very familiar with in the City of Victoria, they base assistance based on the length of tenancy, and so they actually have a bit of a table. Now, I don't want to overcommit, but it's something for sure in talking to Mr. Martin that we would definitely look at. But as I say, as we speak at this table, we haven't got anything specifically established.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear you're open to considering it. Thank you.
And Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question or concern was along the same lines as Councillor Hemmens, noting that those apartment buildings do exist and have current tenants. And although we're looking at maybe a couple of years down the road, I would not be comfortable unless there was some plan or provision for relocation of those current residents. So I hope that's on your radar, and we can deal with that at the appropriate stage.
Yes, as I say, it's something that we haven't developed yet, but certainly hearing members of council that we will put together on something, and I suspect it will be, again, using the Victoria's TAP, Tenant Assistance Program, something based on the length of tenancy in terms of there. I do know that Mr. Martin that the rent is very reasonable. And that there had been many opportunities under the acts to increase rents when he could, but they were not. So those rents currently, I think, are substantially below market.
Thank you, and I guess, Your Worship, my other comment would be along the lines of Councillor Armstrong. I'll be very interested in the traffic studies and how we're going to handle all that increased traffic in that area. But a very exciting project at a key location. We've been waiting a long time for some redevelopment there.
Yeah. And if I can just add, I would hope that you know, a lot of emphasis in terms of the pathways and the central pathway, the proximity to here, City Hall, or council chambers, that we really focus on active transportation, and hopefully we can get away from having to worry too much about cars and worry more about people and active movement. But I certainly do hear what you say.
Well, we can have that debate another night.
Thank you very much. Before I ask Councillor Brown to make the motion, I just want to thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. My personal view is that this is a transformational project, and I use the term transformational in a very positive way. That is a site that has cried out for redevelopment and improvement, so I appreciate it.
I must say, I only remember it some 50 years ago as what was not even called the Tally Ho Pub, but the beer parlor, so that's my memory of it.
To give you some comfort, I too recall that, and so do a couple other members of council, would be my wild guess. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Returning to the future, I would move that the Land Use Contract Discharge Bylaw 2022, number 7355, to discharge an existing land use contract from the property title of 500 Comox Road, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Councillor Brown.
I would move that Land Use Contract Discharge Bylaw 2022, number 7355, pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I would move that Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 4500.204, to rezone 444, 450, and 500 Comox Road, 55 Mill Street, and 1 Terminal Avenue from medium-density residential, R8, and Gateway, D12, to Comprehensive Development District Zone 7, CD7, and to amend the CD7 zone with new zoning regulations to facilitate a mixed-use development and subdivision, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I would move that Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 4500.204, pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Great, thanks. Just wanted to say I really appreciate the vision that was presented on this. It's such a central location, and it's going to be great to eventually see something happen there. So definitely support the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and same as Councillor Gesselbrock. I was at the public meeting that took place, and there were some concerns about parking and then the 15 meters, and that's gone away now, so I'm quite happy to support this project.
Very good. All those in favor, second reading. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Once more with feeling, Councillor Brown.
I would move that Council direct staff to secure the conditions related to Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 4500.204, as outlined in the Conditions of Rezoning section of the staff report dated 2022, August 29th, should Council support the bylaws at third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Ms. Gurry, I see we're at the scheduled break time, so 10 minutes, Council, and we'll resume, please.
This is the 2018 redux of the lighting at Nanaimo's historic bastion. I've had the pleasure of being part of the relighting project on this amazing building in downtown Nanaimo. So what we did is we've replaced the original high-pressure sodium lights, which basically did an okay job of lighting up the bottom 10 feet of the building, and replaced them with modern LED lighting that has the capacity to change color. We can run through a number of different colors that we have pre-programmed here in a pink, a purple, a green. Probably my favorite on here is Rainbow Chase for Pride Week. It'll actually run all the way around the building all the time.
With this new technology, organizations can now request that the bastion be lit to promote their cause by going to the City Nanaimo website and following the instructions. Go to Your Government, Bastion Lighting Requests, complete the lighting request form, and submit. You will hear from us within a couple days if your request has been approved, and the bastion will be lit in the colors that you have requested. If you have any questions, please contact the Mayor's office at 250-755-4400.
So the next time you're in downtown Nanaimo at night, come on and check out the new dynamic lighting at the Bastion.
Oh, hey, Tiana. Hey. It sure is the coldest rink in town.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, buddy!
Nice save, James!
Wow, your goalie is keeping you guys in the game. Cheers.
Oh, man, that's hot.
Sorry, that's the way I like it. Oh.
Go, 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 go!
Penalty shot!
Scalds from hot drinks are a leading cause of hospitalization for children under 5.
2 minutes, down in the front, unsportsmanlike conduct.
Hot tea and coffee will cause serious burns to a child in less than a second.
Got a kid? Use the lid.
What we have here is the Real Ice technology that was installed at the Nanaimo Ice Center. It allows us to use cold water from traditionally hot water that we used to use for making ice. Basically, the water will come in through the bottom, go in through a vortex idea, making the air bubbles microscopic in size, which makes a better, more dense sheet of ice.
Differences that you'll see with the Real Ice is there's less snow developed, so that's easier for cleaning, and also it's a denser, harder, clear ice. So the ice skaters will certainly enjoy that. And the city plans to implement Real Ice at our other 2 arenas as well. Some of the other efficiencies we've implemented in this facility are LED lights in some areas, and we've also, in the last few years, installed a higher efficiency refrigeration system, which lowers our energy costs. Both Zambonis at our facility are now electrically operated, so there's no harmful emissions, and they're very quiet as well. So what this means for the city is that we're able to use less energy and also reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions, which is more beneficial to the environment.
welcome to the city's South Fork Water Treatment Plant. This is where we take water that we would collect in our lakes and rivers, pipe it, we filter it and treat it before we send it off to the city's distribution system in your taps. This facility actually does a better job than most home filtration systems. The water that comes into your home that you use every day, that you bathe in every day, that you wash your clothes in every day, is cleaner than anything you can get anywhere.
Here you see filtration in action. It's kind of like watching paint dry. There's nothing to really see. But if you look in the tank, you'll see the froth on the top. That's dissolved organic matter, and when we aerate the tank, that froths up, and that's why that's up there.
We take all the little particles, all the organic matter, any insects or bugs that might be in the water, and pathogens that we're trying to filter out, they're all gone. We filter the water using a series of membranes.
So what we're looking at here is a membrane filtration module. So when I talk about the membranes filtering the water, this is what we're filtering the water with. And while you might think that the water flows through like the baleen of a whale, it's not true. These are hollow fiber membranes. So each of these little tiny strands are hollow, just like a shoelace. And the membrane is wrapped around the outside of these tiny little hollow fibers. So these sit in a bath of water, raw water, and then we pull the water through the wall of the straw or the shoelace, and then it travels along and it collects in this vessel at the end here. And this hole at the end is where we pull the water out.
And the membranes are like an almost impermeable waterproof layer that we pull the water through. So now we're just left with clean, pure drinking water. Take care.
You are looking at Unit 400 from the City of Nanaimo Public Works Department. This truck is called our paint truck. It puts down most of the center line in the City of Nanaimo. Right now on the back, we have Holly. Today she is in charge of keeping the line straight. She can move the wheel back and forth right or left, which controls this paint gun. And then right behind the paint system, there's a glass beads that are dispensed onto the fresh wet paint for retroreflectivity at night. The painted lines can last 1 or 2 years. Most center lines in Nanaimo are painted every year. The white crosswalks and stop bars in thermoplastic can last anywhere from 2 to 7 years, depending on traffic flow. And on the back here, Derek will be kind enough to be dropping cones onto the fresh wet paint so vehicles do not drive over it. There's a lot of moving parts, high pressure, traffic, a lot of things going on at one time, and we're all working together. There's a lot of prep work before to make the lines straight. There's a lot of pulling of lines. Most of our equipment has guidelines and markers. It's a very rewarding job working for the Public Works Department. Lots of things go on and you stay in touch with the heartbeat of our city.
We're here today to make a couple street names. There was some vandalism in town, and we're just going to make replacements. In the roads today, we're doing our Dundas Street and Bruce Avenue. They're all 8-inch, and we use 3 different sizes, mostly 24-inch, 32-inch, and 36-inch. We do use a consistent font with street names. This is actually my metal blank, so the only material here is the material that I actually will cut out in vinyl. From here, we have to take out the vinyl that's not needed, which is the outer. So all we want to do is save the inside borders. From here, we actually have to put a transfer tape on it. And what this does is it allows us to take the blue vinyl and pull it away from the clear backing that it's on so we can apply it to our aluminum blank. Now that we have our 2 sheeted piece of vinyl, we take our aluminum blank, which has high intensity diamond grade, which you can see behind me. We have all different colors. We have orange, yellow, white, depending on the type of signs. Most of our white signs are regulatory, and the yellow ones are warning signs. And right here, all I'm doing is pushing the transfer tape a little tighter to the vinyl. And then from there, we peel it back, our plastic, which basically leaves us with a big sticker. We put it on the aluminum. And when we're done here, we take our transfer tape off, and as you can see, we're left with Dundas.
We're here at Bruce and Dundas. Somebody's stolen the street names that were here, so we're here to replace them. Our sign shop has just generated us 2 signs, so I'm going to go through the process of putting it together and reinstalling the street names. First thing, we got to center the signs. We do everything on this truck. We've got all the equipment on here to build, install, remove, repair, whether it's street signs, street names, posts, banners.
Rezoning application number RA476 and RA480, 560, 604 4th Street and 361 Howard Avenue. Mr. Holm again, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Another rezoning application. This is a rezoning application on 4th Street that is located between 3rd and 4th and would be, also touches on Howard Avenue, sorry, and would result in the extension of Watfield Road through the site. If you could bring up attachment C, please, the conceptual, or sorry, the attachment A, the context map, that'll identify the property outlined in red there. So you can see it's actually quite it's a number of parcels currently, and it has frontages on Howard and 4th, and then as well would result in the extension of Watfield through between 3rd and 4th through its development. It was formerly actually a site owned by the school district, and is proposed now in the concept that's been presented is 219 units on the 2 properties that are subject to rezoning in a townhouse style form. And if you could please bring up the attachment C, the conceptual site plan, that'll demonstrate what's proposed here. And what's proposed is a comprehensive development zone as well. So the concept that's presented is a concept, but the zoning would very much support development along the lines of what's proposed here. The development also includes park dedication along Howard Avenue, as well as extension of active transportation network through the site. And it's in a townhouse form, which is definitely some form of housing that's in demand. So I think I updated council in our sort of our mid-year update with trends on where we're seeing the type of housing coming forward to address housing affordability and demands for family housing. We see this as one of those development proposals that would address that need, supported by the city plan policy and the neighborhood plan policy for the area as well. This concept is, and as well, there are a number of proposal or items that are intended to be secured, proposed to be secured through this proposal that would include a commitment to family-friendly housing. So 50% of the units proposed would be 3-bedroom or greater, which is I think is quite a good move towards supporting family housing in this part of town, which is very close to schools, as you'd be aware, and as well as Vancouver Island University and on close to transit routes and services. Additionally, proposed here are a community amenity contribution proposal, including park land dedication, as shown on the screen overhead there, as well as improvements to that, and a contribution from one of the parcels that's 604 4th Street of $1,000 per unit towards the Affordable Housing Legacy Fund, which would further go to support housing affordability. Also proposed to be secured our commitment to the city step code rezoning policy, road dedication, the park dedication that's shown here, road reserve covenant, access restriction, as well as a multi-use trail right-of-way through the property. If you could bring up attachment D, conceptual building and renderings there, you can see what's proposed. So it's a ground-oriented form of housing, and as I mentioned, intended to target families with at least 50% of the units being 3 bedrooms or greater. And if you could bring up attachment E, that'll show the proposed public park improvements to be secured through the rezoning. And that's all I had to say about this, but I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you again. I was just looking for the traffic plan. This is one that I've been following, again, just on Facebook, so as to the credibility. But there's lots of concerns about Watfield being used as a drive-through road. Is that being addressed? Because right now it doesn't, they don't believe it has the ability to look after the increased traffic.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear that, but through your worship, you're concerned about Watfield being connected through between 3rd and 4th?
Well, yeah, that's the concerns, because Watfield is going to be one of the connected roads, right, which is a small residential street. So how is that going to impact that? Yeah. And does that road actually have the capacity? I tried to find a traffic plan, but couldn't find it to see if that was addressed.
Yeah, there's quite a sort of diffuse grid road network there as well. So Howard Avenue is quite close as well. And 4th Street is another major connector to Wakesaya. So Howard and Wakesaya would likely take most of the traffic, and there would be active transportation improvements as well. And yeah, so there weren't concerns from a traffic networking perspective with regard to connecting Watfield between 3rd and 4th. I hope that helps. Thanks.
So maybe I need more clarification, because the way I read this, it says it's going to go through Watfield Avenue, the traffic. And that's found in number 4. And that's okay. I'll wait till it comes to public hearing, then that'll be a question for developers when it comes there. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Bonner?
Thank you, Worship. I'm a bit confused here because Watfield's a dead end. How would traffic go through it if it's a dead end?
Mr. Hone?
Sorry, Watfield will connect between 3rd and 4th. If you could please bring up...
oh, I see. They're extending it up that way.
Yeah. If you could please bring up, I guess, I think the conceptual site plan might demonstrate it on attachment, that's attachment C. It doesn't, yeah, so it'll connect between 3rd and 4th.
Councillor Bonner, you're...
Oh, I was just curious. I'm looking at the wrong direction. Thank you.
We're clear? Good. Then Councillor Brown?
I would move that zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.202 to rezone 560, 604 4th Street and 361 Howard Avenue from single dwelling residential R1 and Community Service 1, CS1, to Comprehensive Development District Zone 11, CD11, to facilitate a multifamily residential development past first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I would move that zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.202 pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Councillor Brown?
Yeah, through you to staff. I just had a question here around the use of the CD zone. I'm just curious to why that is, and if it does pass, does it lock in the form?
I'll do my best to answer through your worship, and might have to bring Mr. Horn in if you need more detail. But the CD zone would generally support what's proposed. There's some flexibility. So the development was modeled on the R7, which is an existing single-family row house zone, or fee simple row house zone. But what they're proposing is a building strata. So if these units were fronting on public streets, if they were all fronting on public streets, they could do something very, very much similar to what they're proposing. The CD zone that's proposed here is largely modeled on the R7, and it would support very similar form of development, but as the R7, but allowing for the strata road frontage, so on a private road. Similar form, some of the units are fronting on, or many of the units, I guess, are fronting on private roads as well. So I hope that answers the question.
It does, thank you. And just raises the concern about it sort of being locked in, but I will vote to see it proceed. Thank you.
All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Brown?
I would move that council direct staff to secure the conditions related to zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.202 as outlined in the conditions of rezoning section of the staff report dated 2022 August 29th, should council support the bylaws at third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is rezoning application number RA 455-5378 Rutherford Road. Councillor Brown, you're withdrawing.
I will recuse myself here as I share a lot line with this parcel. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Give you a minute to depart. And then we'll have Mr. Holm, please.
Great. Thank you, Your Worship. If you could please bring up the context map on the overhead, identify the property, which is located on Rutherford Road, and it's adjacent to, directly across Rutherford from Kenwill Drive. You can see it outlined in red there. So that's in the Lindley Valley area of Rutherford, near Vandernook. The proposal is a rezoning from R1 to R6. The concept, so R6 is a ground-oriented sort of a townhouse zone, and the concept that's proposed here is 6 units. And if you could bring up attachment C, please. It's the conceptual site plan. This proposal does align with city plan land use designation for the property, which supports the land use designation is neighborhood, which supports this type of ground-oriented infill type development on the parcel. Again, this is conceptual, what's proposed here, but the R6 zoning would support something very much like this. If you could bring up attachment D, the building renderings, to give you an idea of what conceptually could be developed there. Again, good family housing infill in the area. Close to schools and services as well, and to great trail systems through the Lindley Valley. Conditions of rezoning are outlined in the report that are recommended, including security of a community amenity contribution towards the city's affordable housing legacy fund, as well as some access restrictions and upgrades to street lighting standards. Would be recommended to be secured through rezoning. I'm happy to take questions, but I just wanted to give a brief summary there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holm. Seeing no questions, Councillor Thorpe, would you care to read the motion?
Certainly. My microphone is working.
Probably not. There it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. So I will move that zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.203 to rezone 5378 Rutherford Road from single dwelling residential R1 to low density residential R6 pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you. I'll move that zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.203 pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmons. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? None. Motion carries.
And I will move that council direct staff to secure the conditions related to zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.203 as outlined in the conditions of rezoning section of the staff report dated 2022 August 29, should council support the bylaw at third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. And the next is liquor license application number LA 149-11 Cliff Street. Mr. Holm again.
Great. Thank you, Your Worship. This application was actually before council just for information in July of this year, July 18th. This is a request to permanently expand what was a temporary outdoor patio area. 17.7 square meters is the expansion, and following the council meeting in July, notices were delivered to properties within 100 meters of the subject property. 8 public responses were received. They're attached to the report, and they were all indicating support for the proposed patio expansion. I have nothing more to add, but happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Bonner, seconded Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is development permit application number DP 1248-6985 Island Highway North. And again, Mr. Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship. And if you could please bring up the location plan, the attachment B, the context map, to identify the property. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. This is an application from District Group, and this is for property development permit on property at the far north end, I guess, of Nanaimo. This is what is phase 2 of North Grove. North Grove development. The first phase was 146 units in 3 buildings, so it's behind Michael's and Shoppers Drug Mart, that development at the north end of the city. It's accessed from Island Highway North, and what's proposed here in phase 2, and if you could bring up please the attachment D, site plan and parking plan. What's proposed here is 149 units in 2 buildings. So phase 2 is phase 2 of North Grove is a rental development consisting of 149 units in 2 buildings. 5-story buildings are proposed here, and you can see phase 1 outlined, sort of ghosted out on the diagram to the right on the overhead. If you could please bring up the attachment E, it's the building elevations and details. And then maybe just after that, follow through with attachment F, the building renderings. So as you could see from the previous slide too, the site design is intended to maximize the street presence and takes advantage of solar gain. The proposal is 5 stories, as I mentioned previously. A height variance is proposed from 14 meters to 17.7 meters to allow more efficient use of the site. And to allow for less impervious surface, to allow more water to be absorbed into the ground. There, the property is within the Woodgrove Secondary Urban Center, which would anticipate development of this density and possibly even taller buildings. There's parking provided under building, as you can see here, underground, as well as some surface parking that is central to the project. and there are enhanced amenity spaces and pedestrian trail network and a dog run to support the residential uses proposed on the site. So well thought out. The building design and finish are high quality, and they're complementary to phase one. The design and the building finishes are complementary to phase one. So again, a nice addition to rental housing in the community, and I'm happy to take questions here. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I am not seeing any questions. Someone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Sorry? Councillor Brown, sorry.
Just a comment, Your Worship, the design panel overall thought this was a very attractive project, but they did make numerous recommendations. I just want to commend the applicant and the design team because they actually really responded to them well. So thanks for that.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is development permit application number DP 1251-2355 Kenworth Road. Mr. Holm.
Great, thank you. And yeah, I should to follow up on Councillor Brown's comments, if I might, too. Just to highlight some of the work that the design panel does on all of these applications. The comments from the panel are outlined in the staff reports. I haven't touched on them just for brevity, but there's great work done by the panel members in guiding the design of these projects, and very valuable input. And as Councillor Brown mentioned on the last one, great response from applicants. But so sorry to move forward on this this application. This is a proposed car dealership. This is at if you bring up attachment B, please, for the context. This is located on Kenworth Road. It's between Labio and Bowen Road, a relatively new commercial subdivision, the extension of Kenworth Road to Labio there with the traffic circle there. This is proposed as the Hyundai dealership and showroom, and as well as an independent commercial space. If you could please bring up attachment D, the site plan, I'd appreciate that as well. The site is zoned Corridor 3 with a site-specific amendment to allow auto sales and rental. So this is an anticipated use for the site. The building design's contemporary and typical of the what you'd expect for the corporate branding of this this proposed auto dealer. There are a number of variances that are proposed. I won't outline them in detail, but they're in the staff report to allow the site and building design that are typical for an auto dealer as such as this. If you could bring up, please, attachment F, building renderings, and then attachment G, the landscape plan and details. You'll see what the development concept is for the site more fully. And I'm happy to take questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. If we take this one and the next one, that's 3 lots that have asked for the exact same variances. All car dealerships. I mean, should we be looking at this zoning if it's going to be like literally everything that's in that area asks for a variance exactly the same thing? So I'm wondering if we should be redoing our zoning so they don't have to ask for variances.
Through your worship, yeah, that I think this area is more or less has more or less built out under the zoning. The zoning didn't really doesn't really support the siting and building form that car dealerships typically take. So I think the appropriate route is through variance as we've been bringing these forward. I know it seems a bit redundant, but the corridor zone doesn't typically accommodate car dealers. This is a bit of a site-specific scenario, so I don't know if it warrants a full development of a zone to accommodate them. I think variance is in staff's opinion be the appropriate tool to handle these types of variations from the bylaw requirements. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Someone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Bonner. Seconded Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is development permit application number DP 1264-2358 Kenworth Road. Mr. Holm, much the same as before, as Councillor Bonner's pointed out.
Yes, thanks. I'll try and keep this one brief. If you could please bring up the context map. This is directly across, that's attachment B. This is directly across the street from the previous application. So on Kenworth Road as well. And if you could please bring up the attachment D and then move on to attachment E and F. Just kind of slide through those. Appreciate it. This is proposed as Galaxy Motors, another car dealership. This one is a contemporary design, but it incorporates some natural elements as well with some generous roof overhangs. So not as much a corporate brand, but a little more natural in some of the elements there. And again, a number of variances were proposed as with the previous application to allow the site and building design for the car dealership. Happy to take questions on this one too. Thanks.
Thanks very much. I'm not seeing any questions. Councillor Bonner is moving the recommended motion. Councillor Mark Armstrong is seconding. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Next is M340 Campbell Street, acceptance of project under, quote, revitalization tax exemption bylaw 2018 number 7261. Mr. Holm.
Great. Thank you. If you could please bring up the context map on this one, I'd appreciate that. So this is a request under the Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Program, and this is in relation to a 163-unit multifamily residential development that Council approved a development permit for in November 2021. There it is there. So it's the previous site of the Caledonia Clinic, and you can see the properties there overhead. So again, 163 multi-residential units proposed here. And what's requested is under the Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Program is 10-year relief from the property taxes that would be required under sort of the current state situation. So if this is approved and this complies with the program, the bylaw that Council's put in place to support, to incentivize residential infill or infill development generally in the downtown. If this is approved, then there'd be a 10-year tax exemption. It's estimated at $94,000 annually would be the exempt amount. The proposed investment here is over $28 million. So they'd be exempt from the investment over the current assessed value for the property, basically for a 10-year period. So again, it's attracting significant or supporting significant investment in the downtown. There's a timeline for the applicant to obtain the building permit here, anticipated and written into the agreement here would be October 31st, 2022, which is realistic. They're getting very close to being ready to have the building permit issued here. And then they would have to complete the project by October 31st, 2024. Otherwise, they'd have to come back to council for reapproval, as we'll see in the next item. Happy to take any questions on this, and I believe Ms. Slater may be here as well, but I'm happy to do my best. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Martman, seconded by Councillor Hemmons. The recommended motion. All those in Councillor Brown.
Yes, sorry, but again, I won't be supporting this for consistency's sake. All you're doing is shifting the tax burden onto other people. I don't think these type of programs work. The program has not been reviewed, so I think it's a very poor choice to continue with this policy. Thanks.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. In response to Councillor Brown, I didn't hear absolutely everything, but this was a tax exemption that was provided to encourage growth and density in our urban downtown. why would you not support it?
Councillor Brown.
Projects are either viable or they're not. The unit price will be based on market forces. So I think taken together with the levels of development, and then, you know, obviously more development is increased demand on services, so you're shifting the tax burden by exempting new builds. And I don't think council at the time of the program implementation or to date has been presented with any sort of evidence that these type of programs are resulting in additional development where it's desired. And moreover, there's also another tool that is far more effective, and that would be your zoning bylaw if you wanted to focus development in certain areas. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. Not to prolong this, but I just have a question on what happens at the end of 10 years. Is it they start paying taxes? Is this a rental property, or is it a strata, or is it individually bought units? Because in 10 years, all of a sudden, someone's going to get a big tax bill.
Yeah, so this is anticipated as a rental property. That's our understanding. And yeah, they would, after the 10-year period is up, they would pay the going tax rate for the full assessed value.
And it's hard to imagine something 10 years in the future, but would that be a reason for increasing the rent at that time? I guess that's a provincial thing, I'm guessing, right? Yeah, all right. Got it.
I think your point's well taken, Councillor Bonner, but to get a rental increase above the statutory rate is a pretty difficult process. And if anything, the law and politics is moving in the direction of not allowing those kinds of things, which over the long haul may well have an impact on investment in the community in a negative way. But in the meantime, I appreciate the comments of Councillor Brown, but I think that the program's success to some extent for me is in these kinds of developments that are occurring all over our downtown core. But I think it's a how shall I say, I'm not asking staff, or I'm going to make a motion that staff trying to look into this further so I can report back to council to see about the efficacy of this program, but it's something to consider. All those in favor? And those opposed? Councillors Armstrong, Gesselbrock, and Brown. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is the 100 Gordon Street amendment of project under the revitalization tax exemption bylaw. Mr. Holm, once again.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is under a different program, but similar revitalization tax incentive. This is specific to new hotels and motels to encourage their redevelopment across the city. So this project, council is very familiar with. It's very close to here, and it's a 172 room hotel that's nearing completion. The agreement currently in place allows requires completion by October 31st, 2022. Anticipated completion is actually February 2023. So close, but not quite there. The request, the extension would be to July 1st, 2023, just to allow a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of time to ensure that the anticipated, although the anticipated completion is February, just to allow a little bit of flexibility there. The recommended completion date is July 2023, and this would be a 10-year, again, a 10-year exemption from the additional taxes based on the capital investment, which in this case is $30.2 million. Yeah, I'm happy to take questions about this one as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Holm. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Is this their third request or just the second one?
I believe it's the third. I can check.
Is there anything that can be done to ensure that this happens? Because they keep coming back with request after request after request.
I think it's a reasonable comment, Councillor Armstrong, but in fairness, They started this hotel when COVID descended upon us. We've had numerous supply chain issues. God knows it's hard enough to find a skilled tradesperson in the city of Nanaimo right now. So and quite candidly, the presence of this hotel will certainly assist the city of Nanaimo in receiving revenue, more revenue from this very expensive, though beautiful, Vancouver Island Conference Centre. So appreciate the comments. That's probably given Mr. Holm enough time to confirm whether it is the second or the third.
So this is the second extension, the third approval, the second extension.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Moved by Councillor Martman, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Brown, sorry, not ignoring you. Councillor Brown opposed. Motion carries. The next is the appointment of bylaw enforcement officers. Mr. Holm.
Thanks. I'll keep this really brief, but this is a request to appoint 12 community safety officers as bylaw enforcement officers, which would allow them to undertake enforcement actions as a part of their duties, in the course of their duties. There's a number of, you can see the names listed there. We're happy to have all of those folks joining the team, and they need this approval to fully carry out their duties. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I might say that I'm disappointed in one respect in the overall picture of life in British Columbia that we have to appoint people like this to undertake this kind of work, because I think most of us know what the root causes of this need are, which is inadequate housing and treatment for people with mental health, addictions, trauma, and brain injury. But having said that, at the same time, I'm advised it was a pretty impressive group of applicants who stepped forward to undertake this work, which will be challenging, very challenging indeed. And so I'm delighted to ask someone to make the motion to approve the individuals. Moved Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is bylaws. Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 4500.201. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 4500.201, to rezone 2980 Island Highway North to allow cannabis retail store as a site-specific use in the City Commercial Center, CC3 zone be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Brown.
I would move that Highway Closure and Dedication Removal Bylaw 2022, number 7341, to provide for highway closure and dedication removal of a portion of Lake Road adjacent to 4295 Victoria Avenue be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Martman. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next notice is a motion. Councillor Armstrong has given us a notice of motion re Boxwood Road Walkway. That will be heard at, what's the next meeting, Ms. Gurry?
September the 19th, Your Worship.
Very good. Thank you. No other business. We'll check the question period sheet. No questions. I'm very indulgent as long as it's not 10 o'clock. Agenda items only, of course. If you could introduce yourself and ask your question, please.
My name is Lisa Beaudry. I live at 3263 Adby Road in Nanaimo, but I used to live in Harewood near the 4th and Howard Avenue proposed thing. I missed all the meetings. I didn't know anything about it. So I just found out about it, and I am understanding Nanaimo's growing, 219 units. I like that they're having 3 and 4 bedroom units, but if you have, say, 2.5 kids per those 219 units, you'd have 275 children. And when I lived there, I really wanted a park, and there was no land for a park. So I'm glad that this is being developed and they're putting a park in. But what I'm wondering is why it's so small. 1,219 meters is tiny. I looked up park sizes in other areas in town, and they're all so much larger. And this will be an area for people to meet and build community, and it's tiny. There's hills. If you walk down to the elementary school, which is not a park, it's a school, you guys know there's no parks there. Around the hospital, there's parks. In the North End, there's a lot more parks. I just don't understand why it is so small.
And that is your question. I appreciate that. I'm going to turn to Mr. Holm or Mr. Harding, but I suspect it has to do with the existing rules.
Sorry, through your worship, I can try and speak to that. So I mean, we're looking at the context, the developments taking place within and proximity to other parks and other needs. Looking at, I guess, housing and the form of housing that's proposed has to be weighed off against the amount of park to be provided. They're also providing active transportation improvements through the site, so pedestrian trails as well. I think Mr. Harding could probably speak better to the services that are in the area, but there are services, recreational services in close proximity and walking distance to the area as well.
You want bigger parks?
I want bigger parks, and I don't know the way to deal with this effectively. I mean, I saw this was on the agenda for tonight, and I didn't even realize that there wouldn't be questions specifically pertaining to that building area. So I would like to follow up more. I appreciate the work the council and Mr. Holmes is doing. I know I'm not trying to negate any work that's being done. I just want
Councillor Armstrong,
There's a public hearing coming. That would be a good time to bring forward your concerns when it goes to public hearing.
Okay. And that will be,
It'll be advertised.
Right.
Signs will be up. Legal notice is required.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Martman moves adjournment. Seconded Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone.